What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again. This time we are here with Taylor of Left to Suffer. Thank you so much for being here today, man. It's great to have you here.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. Thank you for giving us some more new music to really be the soundtrack to the 2020s that we are living in. This new EP, and Dying Forever, is absolutely awesome. Being that this is another EP, was this kind of like a continuation of the On Death EP, or is this meant to be like a trailer for the direction Left to Suffer is going into, or is it its sort of like own entity?
No, and Dying Forever was definitely a continuation of On Death. It was pretty much just like making the story kind of round out in a weird way, just because I didn't really want it to end on such a sour note, I guess, for the way On Death did. Because at the end of that EP, the storyline, the woman ends up killing herself, and so I wanted to kind of like give this like revival but like twisted revival story for her or whatever. So she like wakes up and like realizes that On Death was really just like an experiment to try to test her like emotion stuff, her emotional response to everything. So like it kind of like bust out with Rest Your Head into this like EP of her just like trying to figure out what is real and what's not. You know, it's pretty cool.
So, is it fair to say that maybe like And Dying Forever is a little bit more fantasy driven or a little bit more like supernatural? Because I felt like On Death was a very serious, like it had like a very like really I don't
Very
want to
visceral, yeah.
yeah, like it really felt like everyday sort of misery in a way. Like I've always said that this is what would it's like suicidal slam in a way I've called it. So like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I don't know if like And Dying Forever is more fantasy oriented.
It's definitely more fantasy oriented. There's just like more of a it's kind of just like like you wake up and it's like very like I'm trying to like digital age esque feeling. You know what I mean? Where it's like you wake up and you're like hooked up to computers and wires and like you're just in this like AI simulation, which was like the real life simulation of On Death, and it was just kind of more of a like I don't know, just kind of like made it weird. You know what I mean? Just kind of just being convoluted and being a writer, it's just fun to like make up scenarios and stuff. And it was just like On Death was very emotive driven for me. I had to get out of a lot of emotion, so it was very real world and like suicidal and shit. And then with On and Dying Forever, I just kind of wanted to like evolve the story in like a fantasy type of way. You know what I mean? Just kind of take it further.
If somebody is just discovering Left to Suffer now, do you recommend that they listen to On Death before they listen to And Dying Forever? Is it almost kind of like meant to be a
Yeah.
chronological thing, or can they also stand out in their own right?
I mean, they can stand out in their own right for sure, but they also it makes a little bit more sense when you listen to them back to back.
Yeah. And does that all these EPs have any relationship to like A Year of Suffering, like your full length album, or in a way?
No, A Year of Suffering was just like pretty much the first year of us as a band. There's really no thematic elements to that. It was pretty much just a bunch of singles and songs just in a that we put into an album. And then On Death was just kind of its own like thing after that.
hmm Do you need to like? Did you think of this story before you started putting pen to paper on music in a way, and wrote the music according to that, or did this story of what you're exploring in these EPs kind of come together as you were hearing more music in a way?
No, I had the idea of writing this EP for probably about 4 years, and then I wanted to the storyline. I was like, I want to do this grieving process EP and make it like this whole like kind of quote unquote interactive experience where you can kind of feel this person spiraling through the grieving process. And I've wanted to write about that for so long, just because I know what it feels like, personal experience to go through the grieving process in like that kind of traumatic way. So I pushed that to my band right before we started writing for On Death, and then they were like, "Yo, this is a sick idea." So they kind of just like we wrote songs and we kind of felt like which one felt like each step in the grieving process and kind of pieced it together piece by piece after we already had the pretty much the storyline was written. Yeah, the storyline was written before the EP. Is pretty much the answer to that question. But yeah.
And this character and this individual that you're writing about, is it almost meant to be an external metaphor for maybe somebody that you or you care about is experiencing in a way? Or is this somebody who you personally know? or is this somebody who was
So
just developed for the sake of the album?
so I developed the character to pretty much personify me. But like I didn't want it to like tell like a first person narrative of anything that I went through. So I kind of made up a story to kind of mimic the emotions that I went through going through the grieving process. So it was kind of like I just didn't want it to be about me. So I kind of just like put my emotions in a different situation and kind of wrote around the emotions that I had and kind of just made it as creepy and like disturbing as possible to be real, just to like kind of like make it as, you know, to tug at your heartstrings as much as you could to try to like feel the music a little bit more. And so that's pretty much just all what it came from. Is just I just was like, yo, I really want to like write something to get shit off of my chest, like all of my emotions that I've like locked inside for so long, which is why I wanted to write about the grieving process for so long. Um, and then I just kind of like, yeah, just pretty much put my emotions into a different situation and wrote a story out about it. You know what I mean?
And I think it's really fascinating and really inspiring too that you use paint as a paintbrush to create art. And I love asking artists this question because while it is very cathartic, I'd imagine it's also very deteriorating as well. Do you almost feel that like maybe the creative process of writing about something so heavy and so emotional is almost, for lack of better words, partially detrimental as well?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's definitely. I mean, I can be as vulnerable as possible. It's like I mean, there's several times I was because I tracked all of the on death vocals by myself in a room. I self recorded all of it, so I like pressed play and I wrote it out by myself, and I sat there and I really felt myself out, like in that headspace. And yeah, at times, bro, it was hard. You know what I mean? Like it was like one of those like you're pretty much just trying to feel everything all over again, so you can kind of like mimic it into a music sense where you're like, I want to like try to portray these feelings as best as I can through lyrics or delivery or like the for like in a couple of the parts in On Death, it was like frantic, and I was like kind of like da 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 and like spitting stuff out to try to like make you feel the like the frantic nature of like the way that you're thinking. You know what I mean? Like there's like a rhyme to a reason to like every lyric and like every delivery and every like little nuance and On Death. And it was I mean it was hard. So I don't think it's more so detrimental. I think it was more therapeutic for me to get it out so I didn't have to just like sit on it for so long. You know what I mean? Because I've been on this for years now, and I just was like, okay, well, it's time to like spill it. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, like I said, at times it was hard, but at the end of the day, I feel like it was more therapeutic than it was detrimental to myself. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of bands that use the concept of loss as subject matter of all different styles. Like when you look at what Korn did with the Nothing from 2019, you look at what Mastodon
Right.
did with Crack the Sky. Why do you feel that the music that we hear in Left to Suffer is sort of like the best type of music to address this sort of concept?
I just think that metal, like like our like version of metal, like deathcore, metalcore, new metal, is kind of the easiest to get out the pain feeling. Because a lot of people, when they go through loss or they're subject to some sort of trauma, they get mad about it. You know what I mean? You get mad that you're feeling this type of way, or you're mad about the situation, or you're depressed. And like, I feel like just like the way that it's delivered through the style of music that we write is just you feel it more. You know what I mean? You're like, oh wow, this guy's like really hurting because you're yelling and you're singing, and it's just like very, like I said, like a lack of better terms, it's like visceral like emotions. You know what I mean? It's like you can kind of just like get woven into this story so much easier by someone who's just like aggressively screaming at you versus like if you're just singing a pop song about losing somebody. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I feel like the music in itself, and not to discredit the vocals by any means, but I feel like I would get that pain of loss and suffering if I were to listen to
Right.
an instrumental version of Left to Suffer as well.
No, for sure. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like it's like all of the rhyme and the reason behind On Dead like had a motive purpose. Like from the drums to the guitars to the bass to the vocals, like everything was like very emotive driven through that whole EP.
Do you feel that this concept that's addressed on these two EPs is going to be a concept that Left to Suffer is further going to explore on a full length album or another EP? Or do you feel that maybe it's going to kind of just be, this is like just a one off, like a moment in time for Left to Suffer?
Um, so the On Death and I'm Dying Forever touch on like mental illness kind of like feeling stuff. So it's very, like I feel like not everyone, but a lot of people deal with like mental illness in some way or another, whether it be depression or you have bipolar or you have anger issues or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Like whatever that you have, it's like something that I've dealt with since I was a child. I've had like anger issues and I've had, depressive episodes and just like all of these things. It's like Left to Suffer really, like in my opinion, like it's like our band name is like up to interpretation. But Left to Suffer as a whole, what it means to me is like everyone at some point has felt like they've been left to suffer by like whether it be their emotions or people that they love or their friends or whatever. And it's like what I want and what I write is like I want people to feel like they're not the only ones going through those situations. You know what I mean? So a lot of the like mental disorder stuff that like I really like touch on and I dive really deep into about feeling like, similar to the way that I feel, a lot of the time, you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of a tortured human at some point, which is stupid for whatever reason, but it's hard for me to get over things. And so I pour it into music, and a lot of people, like a lot of our fans hit me up and they're like, yeah, man, like I really like appreciate that. Like you really like dive deeper into these things, these touchy subjects. And it's just like, it just is like, you know, like I said, okay, just try to like back because I start to ramble sometimes, so I apologize.
Please do.
But so yeah, like I said, Left to Suffer just means like it's like for me, it's like that you're just not alone. So that like obviously I'm for sure gonna keep touching on the stuff that we talked about and On Death and then Dying Forever, on future stuff for sure.
And do you always write it from a personal experience, or could there also maybe be other stories, or maybe like is there like some research that goes into involved in addressing this in your lyrics?
Research for sure, but it's mainly based off of personal experience or like very close to me experiences. You know what I mean? Like whether it be like my bandmates or things that I've just personally been through. But I mainly write from however I feel because it feels the most genuine.
Yeah, and I mean, the emotion that's addressed in Left to Suffer, I feel, is just as raw as the actual music itself. So like, I just think that there's rawness always prevalent in it.
Thank you, man. That actually means a lot.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. When you, because when you're playing live, you have to bring in a set list from different, different EPs and different albums and whatnot. Do you think that when you like adjust the set list, or play an earlier song before a newer song, and vice versa, that maybe almost brings a different context to the concept that you're addressing too?
That's an interesting question. Sometimes I feel like some of our songs can provoke different emotions in different orders and stuff, but I feel like we're pretty calculated on like the way that we structure our sets, you know what I mean, to try to like deliver the way that these songs are supposed to be given off as best as possible. So I don't think that it's really too much of a difference because we're pretty self-aware, you know what I mean, like we know, you know what songs sound better coming after what songs and whatnot, and what emotions are driven through the set and stuff.
Mhm. Do you think for any album or any EP or any song for that matter that you put out, is it meant to be kind of like just a representation, a stamp in time of who you are, or do you think that maybe the meaning of the album could evolve over time as you evolve as an artist?
I mean, I think music's up for interpretation. I think that it can evolve or it could just be a moment in time. It's really whatever you want it to be at that time in your life. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, do you sometimes look back at material with a different perspective than when you first put it out?
Oh yeah, that always happens, man. I feel like you do that after it gets done, and then you listen to it more times. You're like, oh, I fucking feel a little bit different about this part now, or like, oh, I feel this song means a little bit more of like a different kind of vibe to me now. You know what I mean? Because like whenever you're writing, you're like in a bubble. You're like there's like whatever is going on at the time, and whatever is like that little moment in time, and the whatever words that you put down or whatever like riff you put down, you feel that. You know what I mean? And like you're like everyone's reality is always shifting. So like you could have a whole different set of emotions a year from now, and then listening to that song could be like, oh, this makes me feel like this now. You know what I mean?
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
There are songs that like are very very melancholy, but because they were released during maybe a good time in your life, they could almost give you a positive outcome, and vice versa. There are plenty of
For sure.
happy songs that make me more miserable than a Catatonia song. So
For sure. Absolutely, dude.
yeah. And when it comes to playing live, actually, because I've seen Left to Suffer plenty of times now, always a great experience and always a
Oh yeah.
really awesome experience. And you have awesome fans to interact with and hang out with as well. I've made plenty of
Oh
friends
yeah.
at your
Yeah.
shows.
Dude, our fan base rocks.
Do you put, is there at all a similarity in the energy that you put into your live performance as you do when you're recording vocals? Or do you almost consider songwriting and writing lyrics almost completely separate art to playing live?
This is a hard question. So like approach wise, I feel like it's you have to kind of be in the same headspace, but live it's always gonna vary. You know what I mean? Because like it's just like especially if you're touring, like if you're playing the same songs over and over and over again every night, like it's gonna be, you're still gonna feel the emotions, but like there's just nothing like when you're tracking a song for the first time and really pouring those emotions out that like I feel like you don't really ever get that like I mean, I still get like really emotional sometimes when we play some of our songs, so I'm not saying it's like completely gone, but like there's just not it's really like there's nothing like the first time of anything. You know what I mean? Like you hear a song for the first time. Like there's several songs that I'm like, man, I wish I could hear that song for the first time again. You know what I mean? Because it's
Absolutely.
like the feelings that you get from like listening to a really good song for the first time can just never be mimicked. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
like, yeah, it can like draw emotional value like after the fact and stuff, but there's just nothing like that first time. You know what I mean?
definitely,
And
definitely.
it pretty much goes the same thing of like there's nothing like recording a song and feeling it, coming together for the first time versus like playing the song for the first time live versus like the 100th time.
Yeah, and you know what? I give you credit for even being able to admit that because it's funny too. Like I interviewed the band Epica one time. You know,
Mhm.
different style of metal altogether. But like I forgot what song she was referring to, but she was telling me Simone was telling me that like this song is their biggest hit, and you know they loved it
Yeah.
when they first put it out. Now they dread every single time they have to play it. So like
Yeah.
that definitely does play a role in it. I'd imagine Papa Roach felt really good when they put out Last Resort, but I doubt it doesn't feel like the first time now.
For sure. No, yeah, absolutely. You're playing the same thing over and over again. It's gonna lose its magic eventually.
Yeah, or maybe even gain some more magic too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, when it comes, and also kind of going back to your live shows, is because not only have I seen you play with like different bands, whether it be like deathcore bands or metalcore bands or whatnot, but I've also seen you play in like a variety of different venues as well. Sometimes I would
Yeah.
see you at like a Live Nation venue where there's a barricade and security and it's a bigger venue. But then I'll see you play at like a DIY club where it's a freaking free for all. Do you almost feel like that those types of venue experiences are like completely different Left to Suffer experiences as well?
Absolutely, dude. If you see Left to Suffer in like some dingy DIY spot that you can like stand right in front of me and like I feel like you feel the music a little bit more. You know what I mean? There's just like a little bit more of like an interactive experience versus being 6 to 7 feet away from the fucking front of the stage because there's a barricade. There's definitely the like loss of touch. You know what I mean? Like there's like it'd be like seeing one of your favorite bands and being able to stand right in front of someone that like you really look up to and be like, oh my god, like that guy's screaming in my face and I could reach out and touch him if I wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus I'm 10 feet away from this guy and he's on a stage that's 5 feet above my head. You know what I mean? Like there's like the separation of like being interactive that makes the experience completely different every time.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's the best of both worlds behind it too. Like I don't think that the experience is necessarily hindered from like seeing if I were to see what like a
No,
Gramercy theater. I think it if anything it creates an atmosphere. I feel like that's like the
yeah,
closest to where
the
like left.
sound's better. You'll
Yeah.
be able to hear the songs way better, which is the thing. It's just like I feel like the emotion of like being up front at like a fucking DIY show, like some hole in the wall venue, and like just feeling the vibration come from the cabs, and then like versus like hearing everything in a concert hall where you can hear everything being played. Like it's two different emotions. You know what I mean? You can really hear the song for what it is, or you can watch this band sweat all over you in a mosh pit that's right behind you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, there's just two different like worlds. I feel like.
Yeah, the bigger venues, they sound better and they smell better for sure. But
Mhm.
but you
For
know,
sure.
the DIY clubs, I think again, it's the best of both worlds, and I like that. Like, I think like I would never want to see a band like Opeth at like a small DIY club. That's just not
For
what it
sure.
is.
Yeah.
I saw them at Radio City. That created a whole new reality. But I feel like with a band like Left to Suffer or I Am or any hardcore
Yeah.
band, you could play anywhere. I think you could equally rock Madison Square Garden as you would rock a CBGB's or something like that if it was still around.
That's sick. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such a great conversation. Is there just
Absolutely, bro.
is there just anything else with Left to Suffer that you would like to promote? We got this new EP out, but could there be a Left to Suffer full length album in the works or anything you'd like to promote? I know you got the Carnifex tour coming up as well, so feel free to plug that.
Yeah, we got just released in Dying Forever. We're playing Blue Ridge Rock Festival in September. We're going on tour with Carnifex, Spite, Oceano, and Crown Magnetar in September, October. We have some more stuff that's already been worked out after that, and we just got done tracking an LP like 2 weeks ago.
Oh hell
So,
yeah! That that's gonna be
so
awesome.
there will be more music coming very, very soon.
Yeah, and you and touring with Carnifex is a great like package because Scott Ian Lewis also has his own like character that he develops in his music as well. So I think there could be a
Yep.
great collaboration or something in the works. I don't know if
For sure.
I don't know if you've toured with them before, but I hope you talk a lot on this tour together.
Hell yeah, bro. No, we definitely will. I love Scott. He's been really supportive of this band for a while, and so it's really cool that we get to go out and tour with him.
Yeah, yeah. Just make that collaboration happen. I think two
Yes, sir.
thinkers with this lyric writing is gonna make for an epic story.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Taylor. Everybody, we are here with Left to Suffer. Be sure to check out And Dying Forever, and also check out their previous EP, On Death, and even A Year of Suffering. Check out their whole catalog if you could. New stuff coming soon. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
Yes, sir.